Hi and welcome to Miss Daisy Patterns online video tutorials. Today we are going to be taking a look at how we make these cushion covers. They're the simple envelope cushion cover and they both have appliquéd onto them, an X and an O. The reason being that these two cushions are part of a set that make up a floor game that children can play called tic-tac-toe, which you're probably all familiar with anyway. But if you make 5 X's and 5 O's, these cushion covers and fillers can actually be used as the floor game, but also used for the little ones to sleep on or cuddle up in, or just as throw cushions over the bed. These are made very simply. They're made as an envelope cushion. Because each of the cushions are just 12 inches by 12 inches, I made all of the fillers. So we're going to go through making the fillers for the cushion. Each of these pieces are appliquéd on and they use fusible webbing on it to actually stick them down beforehand. That's bond web, so we're going to go through that. And because the cushions are designed to be also scattered on the floor, what I've also done is made them super washable by French seaming the entire cushion cover, allowing for the seam to be sealed in, making them more secure, and when they're washed it also means that they can be washed in the reverse, saving on the appliqué piece at the front. So that's what we are going to be making today. Right, so the first thing we're going to take a look at today is actually making the fillers for the cushions first. The finished size of the filler is 12 inches by 12 inches. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with a piece of fabric that's 13 inches by 13 inches. The reason for this is it's the 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Now, I choose to make my cushions in cream or in white, the fillers, because my cushion covers are in cream. Now what I don't want is I don't want a darker filler because you'll see it, but by all means, if you have darker cushion covers, use whatever fabric you think is suitable. I'm using cream, 2 pieces of fabric, 13 inches by 13 inches. Again, when it comes to making fillers, I usually upcycle an awful lot. This particular fabric is off an old bed sheet that has been cut down, which will give me enough inner fillers to hopefully fill all of the 10 cushion covers that I will actually be making. So 13 by 13, we're going to pin in place. So I just pin in the corners in the center just to hold these 2 in place for when I bring it to the sewing machine and sew all the way around. Now I'm pinning in place like so. Right, so once I've pinned, I'm going to get a tailor chalk pencil and just roughly, we'll say about, leaving a space of about, on one of the edges of about, say 5 inches or so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little point and a little mark. Now the reason why I'm putting those marks here is I'm going to start sewing at this point, work my way around, and I'm going to finish there because that's where I'm going to turn the cushion right side out and I'm going to stuff it. And this is what I'm actually stuffing the cushion with. It's craft filler, so it's for toys and cushions. It's clean, it's washable. It looks like this, and that's what we're going to be stuffing with. So the next stage now is for us to take this to the sewing machine. We have marked the points that we start here, we finish here. We line up at this dot, we line it up so as that we're leaving a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, drop down the needle into it. Now my machine is set to have a 2.5 stitch length, okay, but again it's 2.53 should be fine. Now make sure to do a reverse a little bit as you go, and making sure to leave a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. When you get to your corners, stop with your needle in, lift up your presser foot, drop it back down again and continue. Now remembering to stop at the blue dot or the marking that you've made, and do a couple of stitches backwards and forwards to finish. So now what I would advise here at this point is I would do a zigzag stitch all the way around, just to give added protection to the entire piece. So set your machine to do the zigzag. Okay, and again, just give some extra strength to the inside of the cushion. Again, finishing at the same point. Right. At this point then, remove the pins. Trim off any loose threads. Okay, and your cushion cover is ready, filler is ready to be turned. So literally you turn it, popping out your edges here, popping out here, popping out here, and here. That is your filler cover ready for stuffing. Right, so what we're doing to fill it is we use the wadding. It comes in bags like this, and when you get it, you open the bag and you tease it out like this. And take clumps of it, and inside that, in that section that you've left open where you've turned it, you start filling it. Now fill into the corners first. Okay, so you take it and you fill the corners first. Okay, into the corners, and again teasing it out and filling into the corners. So that's the corners done first. Do not be surprised at how much of this will actually go in. I like to stuff mine medium, not too hard, but generous enough so as that there's enough of a cushiness in the filler. Pulling it out, stuffing, you stuff around the edges, again more, again around the edges. Now at this point you should actually be stuffing the center, so making it nice and cozy and fluffy and to the edges. So we're almost there. Right, it's pretty much the same now, so I'm going to take this and leave it aside. And the last thing we have to do now is we have to seal this closed. Fit it underneath like so, drop down your foot. Now you're just literally going to be sewing down along the edge of it. Once you've positioned, you can take out the first pin. Making sure to do a back stitch to begin. That's it. And they both stay together. Taking out the second pin as you continue along. At this stage you probably could also take out the third pin because it's not a huge area. Holding it flat and making sure you're sewing the two layers together. Now what I would say is if your cushion is any fuller than this, you may need to actually do a hand sew on it, and you won't be able to do a machine stitch on it because you may not get it under the presser foot. But that's it, that's your cushion filler finished. Right, and now for the envelope cushions. To make these cushions, what we're going to do is I'm going to make an X and an O today. You are going to need 2 pieces of fabric, that's 13 inches by 13 inches. Now these are actually going to be the front sections to your cushion cover. I'm using cotton calico for this, purely because I like it, and I like the cream and I like the contrast of the 0 and the X against it. So you've 2, these are both the front. You need 2 of them, 13 by 13 inches square. For the envelope section for the back, you're going to need 4 pieces, and this is for the 2 cushions. That's 13 inches by 9 inches, a rectangle. And this one will be 13 inches by 9 inches, and you will run an iron where you turn an inch over, so that'll turn into 13 by 8 inches and 13 by 8 inches. Right, so but first of all I'm going to leave these aside, we'll go back to this bit. We do the applique first, and the pattern for the applique, the X and the O's, is actually available to download from our website. All you have to do is click on this link here. When you download them, you print them at 100% and cut them out as seen here. The next step you need is you need to have a piece of orange fabric or whatever color that you want to use that fits your 0, that fits the 0, the O, okay? Now that piece of fabric is going to be 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches. So you need a piece of fabric 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches. Make sure your 0 fits in the center of it. And the next piece you need is you'll need a piece of bondeweb. Now this is bondeweb. That is exactly the same size as the piece you want as the orange piece of fabric. Exactly the same size. Right? Okay. Now, bondeweb is a fusible webbing that has a paper section on one side and it's got a glue type webbing section on the other side. This gets activated when you heat it up, and in order to use it, what you do is you have that rough side, the gluey side, facing up towards you. You get the wrong side of your fabric, and you face it down onto it. Wrong side of fabric, face it down onto it. Now that is ready to be taken to the iron, but I'm going to do the next one. So this is your 0. We've made sure it fitted. We have the paper side down, the sticky side facing us, the wrong side of the fabric facing that, the right side of the fabric facing us. I'm just going to leave that to the side now. For our X, I've been using blue cotton. And again, you need to make sure the piece of fabric you have, the X fits inside of it. In this case here, it is approximately, it's just under 9 inches by just over 7 by 9 roughly. Now that X we can see fits perfectly inside it. And again, we have a piece of bondeweb that is exactly the same size as the blue square. So we lay the bonded web down flat, the paper side facing the table, the gluey side, you can feel it, it's got a texture on it, it's quite rough, facing you, the wrong side of your fabric facing down, and the right side of it facing you. So that piece now is also ready to be ironed. Right, so we're now at the ironing board, and what you need is a good dry hot iron, and you place it down exactly the way we positioned it. Now just be very careful, because if you do accidentally hit any of the bonded web itself, it will leave a residue on your iron, so just be very careful. So you press it down nice and gently. Okay, press it down nice and gently, because what you're doing is you're activating the sticky surface. So you press it this way first of all, flip it over, and what I like to do is I like to just hold it in place. So you're holding it in place for a few seconds. As you go along. Okay, making sure that the edges are all down. Right, so that's that one done. Now what's really important here at this point is just give it another press here. Give it another press just to make sure. Okay, now it's really important you take this and you leave it aside to cool, and make sure it's well cool before you come back to it. So again, we're going to repeat the process, and we're repeating it positioned exactly the same way. The wrong side of the fabric is facing the glue section of the fabric, and ironing in place. So smoothing over, and we turn it over. Now if you have any pieces like that that are over, don't touch them with the heat. Just make sure to remove them, because if they actually get activated, they will stick to your ironing board, they'll stick to your iron, and you don't want that to happen. So holding in place, giving it a good press, okay? Holding in place and giving it a good press. Right. So it's well activated. Right. Right. So that should be that section ready. Now, so we have our prepared pieces of cotton for our pattern to be transferred onto it. So simply what you do is you get your pieces that you downloaded and printed out, and you pin them in place. Okay, so you take it and you pin it in place. You do this exact same thing to the X. Again, positioning it at the center of the part that you want, and pin in place. Now remember, you have let the entire piece cool down before you do this. Right. So we've this nicely pinned up. Now in order to, we're going to cut these out, and we're going to use the scissors. The scissors I'm going to use is my paper scissors. The reason being is that even though this is fabric, the actual bonded web has got a backing of paper on it, and if I use my fabric scissors on it, I'll end up dulling my fabric scissors. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out. Now, in saying that, my paper scissors is also nice and sharp, so just make sure to use a nice sharp scissors to do this, okay? Very simply, you cut this out like so, all the way around. Now, sometimes starting the inner section is a little bit difficult, so what I do is I start with my rotary cutter and just lining it up against the edge here, I do a slight incision. And what that does is that opens up a space for me to put the scissors in without having to fooster with it. So again, I follow this around all the way. So that I leave aside just in case I want to use it again in the future in a different project or something else, but it's a good piece of cotton and it's got the bond web on the back of it. So you unpin it, unpin your pattern, and that's your 0 ready to go. Now if you leave your pattern and your pieces aside, and any pieces can be gotten rid of there, and then the next thing we do is we cut out our X, again using the scissors. And be careful at these points here. Now, again, with these smaller pieces, because they have the bonder web on them, I will leave them aside for maybe using again in the future. Right, unpin your X. Your X, and the pattern can be left aside, and that's your X and O ready to go for the next stage. Right, so what we've done here is we've moved back over to the iron, and what we've taken with us is we've taken one of the cushion cover fronts. So we've one cushion cover front, so it's the 13 by 13 inch square. Now what you're going to do at this point is I want you to fold the cushion cover in half and do a slight press of a line all the way along. Open it up and again fold it in half in the other direction and do a slight press with your fingers, because what that will do is that will give you this sort of a crisscross line for positioning your X onto the front of this. Now make sure that you've got the right side facing you, and this is your bonded X. Now what you do is once it's cut out, you want to take off the piece of paper that is at the back of this. Now take it off very gently. Now as you're taking it off, you'll see that you're actually leaving behind the glue. So what you're doing is you're leaving behind the glue and you're taking off the piece of paper. So that's the front, that's the back. You see the glue residue on it. And now you're going to line this up. So essentially you pick the 4 points here, like so. 4 points here, that's running through there, that's running across there. You can see the lines coming out evenly. You're going to grab your iron and you're going to press this in place. And what you're doing is you're reactivating the glue that was left there, and you are going to be fusing the X onto the front of the cushion cover. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over and do the same over this side. Okay. So that is again that's fused together. And what you want to do is, again, you want to leave this to cool. Now we're going to repeat exactly the same thing that we did here, but we're going to repeat it with the 0. So we'll place this over here and position out our 13 by 13 inch square. That is the front of our cushion cover. Fold it in half, press it lightly so as you get a line, fold it in half, press lightly so as you can find the center point of the square, which is right there. You grab your knot, which again has the paper on the back of it. You remove the paper, leaving behind the sticky residue. So you leave behind the sticky residue, and you're going to position this in the center. Now a good way to actually measure if this is exactly in the center is grabbing your measuring tape. It's 1 3/4, 1 3/4, 1 3/4 inch and 1 3/4 inch from that center point, so that we know that that is exactly in the center. And again, we just press this in place, reactivating the glue and attaching the two pieces of fabric together. Okay, turn it over and press on the back. Now, okay, so that is our 0 done. Now, what we are going to do with these two is we are going to take both of these, once they've cooled down, we're going to take them to the sewing machine and we're going to be running an applique stitch all the way around the outside of the circle and the X. So what we're doing now is we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to applique all the way around the outside and the inside, and also on the X. On our sewing machine, what you need to do is you need to set your stitch to either a zigzag stitch that's very close together, so you shortest stitch length and the widest zigzag stitch that you can possibly get your machine to. This machine, on the other hand, actually has an applique stitch on it, so I just set that in, and that's number 11. I start by positioning right next to it, dropping the needle in, and away we go. Right, okay, so that is all the way around the first circle done. Now this time when you cut it, cut enough of the thread, leave enough of the thread here, because what you're going to do is you're going to thread those on a needle and you're going to pull them through, and on the back of it you're going to do a couple of stitches to secure those final threads. Now you're going to repeat that process around the inner circle here, and you're going to repeat the process on the X. Right, so we've come from the sewing machine, and what we've done is we've appliqued all the way around the outside and the inside of this circle. Okay, now to assemble the actual cushion cover, we start with this. Now the next piece, if you'd seen earlier, we have our 13 by 13 inch square, which our applique circle is on. Now we had two sections, and one of those sections was 13 inches by 9 inches, and the other section was 13 by 9. So I folded it half an inch, folded it another half inch, and I did a line of stitching to hold it in place. Literally a straight line of stitching all the way down, doing a back stitch at the beginning and the end of every line of stitching that you do. So that leaves us then with a piece that's 13 inches by 8 inches because of the double fold, which gets rid of an inch essentially. Now I've done that on both of these, so I have two pieces for the back and I have the front piece. I take the front piece and I'm going to face the front piece down with the reverse of it facing me, right? I then take one of the folded pieces, one of the side pieces, and I get the right side of it facing me. So I lay it down, line it up, and I have the right side of it. So it's the piece with the fold is on the inside and the right side is facing me. Again, I take my next piece and I place this down. So essentially what I have is I have what looks like the outside of the cushion on sewn, and it is the outside of the cushion. What I do here then is I pin these together. So remember, you've got your front piece facing the table, then you've got your two pieces which essentially creates the envelope section, the right side of it facing you. And don't think that this is wrong, because we are actually going to be sewing the outside of the cushion together. Our first line of stitching is going to be completely around the outside of the cushion. Now we need to line that up a bit better there, so that's okay. Okay, outside, right? Now I'm going to be taking this one to the sewing machine and I'm going to be sewing all the way around. But before I do that, I'm going to actually show you what this looks like on the X. So here's one where I've completed the X, appliquéd all the way around. You see the actual envelope section here. So that's the inside of the cushion. But as you see, I've done the line of stitching all the way around on the outside. So it's all the way around on the outside. Your cushion cover essentially looks like it's finished, but it's not. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take that cushion cover and you're going to turn it inside out. Okay. So the inside of your cushion is now going to be on the outside. You lay this flat. Lay this flat here. At this point now we get our chopstick, and what I want to do is I want to literally gently press out those corners as much as possible. So gently press out the corners as much as possible. And it looks like at this stage now that you've actually got the right side out because the seam is in the right place. But in order to create the French seam, to actually trap that seam inside the other seam, we are now going to do another line of stitching, and that other line of stitching is going to be done right along this line here. So you're going to sew here, here, right the way down here, right the way down there, trapping that outside seam inside. So we just recap on that again. You front of the cushion, face it down. You have the two reverse sides facing you. You're going to sew as close as possible to the edge all the way around. On these frayed bits, what you'll want to do is once you've got your line of stitching in place here, you'll want to cut them off. You don't want any of those when the fabric is turned. So we're back at the sewing machine here, and what we're again going to do is we have our original line of sewing on the outside of the cushion. We've turned the cushion so it's the wrong side facing us, and we're going to sew in about ½ an inch all the way around. Okay, about ½ an inch, just under ½ an inch all the way around. So you position your fabric in, press down, put down your presser foot, and you're going to do just a straight line of sewing all the way around the 4 lines, making sure to do a back stitch at the beginning and end, and be careful when you're going over the folded section. Now lifting up the presser foot and taking this out and trimming off your threads. Okay, now what we have here is, as you can see, there's a seam all the way around the inside of the cushion, and the original outside seam is sealed inside this. So when we then turn this out, again popping out the corners, turn this out, again popping out the corner, turn it out, popping out the corner. Okay, now if you do, you'll see you have a perfectly made cushion. Now if you do have any of these stray threads that you didn't manage to trim off before you ended up sewing, just give them a quick snip and they'll come off now. Right, so that is your finished cushion. Perfect seam on the outside, a sealed French seam on the inside, and the last thing we have to do now is we just grab the filler that we made earlier and we pop the filler inside our envelope cushion. Pop it out inside. With a nice flap over, and it's nice and cozy and cushy, and that's it, perfectly made. As you can see, I finished all of my tic-tac-toe envelope cushions. Lots of work there. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial and you will subscribe to our channel. The subscription button should appear just here if you're interested, and please do. Now just a reminder, the X and the O that's on these cushions, the tic-tac-toe game cushions, is available to download from our website at missdaisypatterns.com. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you again in the future, and happy crafting.